What's up, everybody? It's your boy B. Scott with the Philadelphia Eagles. I just want to thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star rating. Fly, Eagles, fly.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Eagles Brawl of the Brawl Network. However you're listening, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get the podcast. We greatly appreciate it. Co-host Conor Myles here with my co-host Tyler Steege. We have a special guest that Tyler reached out to bring onto the show, my guy, Ian Hartitz. He works for PFF for the fantasy side. You guys all know him on Twitter because he makes all those great tweets. And I also, not going to lie, I love the thing that you say about Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson is a 3-down back. I love that slogan that you branded for yourself. That's a really great slogan. Ian, thanks for joining the show, though. And I know Tyler brought you on, so I don't want to steal the thunder from his guest. So, Tyler, take it away.
This ain't my guest. I did want to get a special fantasy advisor on before I had my big draft. I had my huge fantasy draft with all my friends tonight. So I wanted to get some advice and also ask why the hell Miles Sanders isn't going in round 1. What is up with that? Like, I don't understand. That is my biggest question in fantasy is Miles Sanders. I think I just saw him get moved up around like 13th overall. He was flirting with like 17th or 18th, I think. But that is the biggest thing I want to pick your brain on is Miles Sanders and what you think his ADP is or should be, and pick your brain on it.
Yeah, dudes, thanks for having me on. I actually just did a big rankings adjustment on like Thursday right before because I knew this would be a big draft weekend. I did drop Myles down to 13, so I was not, in the 17. I don't know why you'd be moving him up at this point if you had him lower. That doesn't really seem all that sensical to me, but it's just kind of the injury right now and just against, similarly ranked guys like Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb. I just wanted to bump them up a little bit, but no, man, I think the reality that the Eagles haven't gone out and signed Devontae Freeman or one of these early down backs that we kind of thought they would if an injury popped up speaks volumes about what they're going to do. And, I have been hearing Deuce Staley talk up Sanders all offseason, seemingly, guys. I mean, this dude loves Sanders, and he's even gone out there, I think, and said, fantasy investors should be looking at this guy. But to me, it's a mix of that and what we actually saw from Doug Peterson, giving Sanders, I believe it was the 4 highest single game snap rates since he's joined the Eagles. And, it has been a committee backfield in the past, but you look at the running backs he's had, and especially in Philly, I think it is fair to say, Peterson hasn't had a running back like Miles Sanders. Now, we get into trouble with this stuff sometimes. Last year I was one of the people on the, Bruce Arians doesn't use tight ends, but he's never had a tight end like O.J. Howard. So we got to be careful. But I do think Sanders, particularly as a receiver, showed to be a really high-level player last year. I mean, some of those pass protection snaps he had were just vicious. So he really doesn't need to come off the field. And the reality that they haven't, taken an early down guy definitely has him up there. He needs to be, in anyone's top 12 RBs. And honestly, I put Michael Thomas just ahead of him, but he should be going in the majority of first rounds because if you guys have done the, best balls or mock drafts out there, I mean, the running back pickings get slim as hell rounds 4 or 5 on. So, I definitely want to come away with 2 of those running backs in that top 12, top 13 tier.
See, my thing about Miles Sanders, when I see fantasy writers write about him, they always say that there's not enough to go off of. There's another fantasy writer I quoted because I said he brought up the fact that he rushed like 800 yards and then his yards, there was I think it was 54 rushing yards per game he averaged and all this stuff. And then I'm like, and then he goes, why are we overhyping Miles Sanders? And I was like, well, you could say the same for Christian McCaffrey coming off his rookie year then, if that's the argument you want to go with, because Christian McCaffrey's rookie year was worse than Miles Sanders' rookie year, and yet we still took him very high the next draft, and rightfully so. He proved us right. I think Sanders is in the same boat because, like you said, his pass protection is great, so why take him off the field? He's also a vertical threat. He's a legit vertical threat. You can line him up out wide, and I believe the Eagles will this year. I think you're going to see Sanders in the slot too, which even helps his PPR gain a little bit. So with me, I'm taking Miles Sanders. If I have a pick in the 9 to 12 range, I'm considering Miles Sanders absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think biggest thing you're going for in a running back in round one is obviously volume. You want to know, but second thing is I like running backs in an offense that I know is going to be in the red zone, and the Eagles can move the ball, and like a guy like Austin Eckler, like that kind of like in the Chargers offense, that kind of scares me in a sense. So like last year when Barkley was going over, sometimes even McCaffrey, he was going over Zeke. To me, I'm like, this guy's got a rookie QB, so like you have to factor in to me in round one, it's got to be surroundings. And I think Miles Sanders benefits from volume, and he benefits from an offense that should move the ball. So to me, I just think he's a first round lock for sure. I have pick 9 tonight, and I plan on taking him pick 9. And I need you to confirm it for me. Is that okay to do a pick 9 in a 12-man?
Oh, yeah, you're fine. I mean, I think in the if you try to go like top 6, then I'd say, nah, I think you should be taking, CMC, Saquon, Zeke, Kamara, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Dalvin Cook. I think that's kind of the consensus big 6 at RB. But after that, I mean, honestly, 7 to like 14, you can kind of mix and match them a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. And again, I had Sanders ahead of Eckler for the majority of the offseason. It's just right now, one of them is perfectly healthy. The other one's a little bit banged up. So, it just came down to that a little bit. But yeah, you can't be using these full season splits on guys and just kind of taking that lazy way out. I mean, Sanders was the guy for the last 8 weeks. So why wouldn't we take, the most relevant sample size we have, particularly when they haven't brought in anyone to, even a little bit take Jordan Howard's role. So good point on the downfield receiving stuff too. Those wheel routes, man, they were just slaughtering.
That's going to go anywhere
throughout the season.
Real quick, what on Edwards-Helaire? Do you have any doubts on him as far as, I guess, a committee there?
If Damian Williams was still there, then it'd be an issue. But right now, no. I think we're going to see Clyde get 70%, maybe even higher.
Once he came out and said he's a better Brian Westbrook, I was like, okay, that usage is going to go crazy.
That's what I'm saying, man. If it was one of you guys like making that comparison, I'd be like, all right, get out of here. But when it's Andy freaking Reid comparing it, it's like, okay, I guess we got to listen to the guy now.
Boston Scott actually came on strong the last 4 weeks of the season fantasy-wise. Right now he's not really a draftable player, but I feel like that's a wrong thing because I do think if you do get Miles Sanders, I think that's the perfect handcuffs solution because I will say for every 7 snaps Boston Scott was on the field, he had a first down. So he's productive.
Yeah, man. So the thing with these handcuffs, I think there's only 4 clear cut. If the starter goes down, this guy's walking into like a 80% plus snap workhorse role. I think they're Latavius Murray, Tony Pollard, Alexander Madison, Chase Edmonds. Boston Scott is right on that border there. Like he could be. I'm just not super confident that he would be because while he balled out at the end of the year, I mean, you guys saw the state of the wide receiver core at that point. I mean, they were throwing Josh Perkins the ball 5 times a game. Nothing against him, obviously, but it's just Wentz had no weapons at that point in the season. So I don't know if we should be expecting Scott to continue to catch 4 to 6 passes a game. That'd be fantastic. I mean, that would give him legitimate potential weekly flex upside, whether or not Sanders is even playing. But I think his late season kind of rise was more a state of what, Wentz was having to throw to and kind of who was on the field. But, he's a little banged up too. And again, the fact they didn't feel the need to sign Freeman, these guys, it does seem more and more like if Sanders got hurt, Scott would at a minimum, be kind of the lead back of a potential, 2-back committee. So he's not a backup guy I'm, banging the door down for. I would prefer to get, get my 6 or 7 running backs in these drafts sooner rather than later. But no, I mean, if you're sitting there at the end of the draft, especially if you have Sanders already, I don't mind going to Scott. There's been a debate in the fantasy football community. It's like, okay, you don't want to handcuff your running back with that actual running back's handcuff. And the reasoning is like, okay, if you have Ezekiel Elliott and you pick up Tony Pollard, like there's no scenario where both of them are balling out this season. Now, if you have Zeke and Latavius Murray, maybe they do both somehow have a really good year. But, I think this season is funky enough where, okay, if we're going to be getting dudes like dropping off up to Sunday morning because of COVID, having, if you have 16 plus roster spots, I think you can devote one of them to your stud running backs backup. So I don't hate it, particularly if it is one of these backups like Boston Scott, where if Sander was out, I mean, he might not be a top 10 projected guy.
Real quick, because I just want to add one last thing. So that's not Eagles related because now we're just talking fantasy. Is there any chance, because I'm starting to get these feelings in my soul that Austin Eckler could be the next CJ Anderson type fantasy boomer bust, because I know that everybody pulls up the stats of like what LaShawn McCoy did with Tyrod Taylor, but Tyrod Taylor in the Buffalo Bills is completely different than Tyrod Taylor right now. So I'm a little worried about Austin Eckler, and I also do like Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. I think they're going to get a little bit more opportunity this year, especially in the Anthony Lynn system. We're going to see all backs being used, but is there a cause for concern for Austin Eckler? Because there's no way, like you're just overthinking it.
I think he deserves to be in anyone's top 12. And again, if you want to put Sanders or, Mixon and these guys ahead of him, I don't blame you. But look, everyone, the big issue this whole offseason has been, Phillip Rivers isn't there to feed him all these targets anymore. And okay, that's a fair concern. He's not going to have 8 or 9 receiving scores. He's not going to catch 90 balls again. But he has been like their bell cow feature back whenever Gordon has missed time over these past 2 seasons. 7 games. He's played between 65 and 95% of snaps every single time. And yeah, Jackson and Kelly will be involved, but like Eckler is so unique in the way he's used that this is a situation where we're looking at the RB1 and like the wide receiver 3 on the Chargers. So even if it isn't Tyrod, if it isn't Rivers throwing the ball, it's going to be slightly less efficient. I do think Tyrod will give a considerable boost in the run game for Eckler. And, we can be confident. You're talking about Sanders lining up wide. That's one of these common things we always love to talk about in August. Usually it doesn't end up panning out. I think Sanders has the skill set to do it, but it is just a common thing out of camp. Now with Eckler, he spent 26% of his snaps in the slot or out wide last season. Only Kareem Hunt, who's at 33, and Tariq Cohen at 39 were higher. So this is a situation where Kelly and Jackson probably get 50% of the running back snaps. Eckler gets 50%, but he's going to get another 25% as a true receiver. Yeah. I just think he's so good. They just gave him a 40-year, $25 million contract. We've seen him, just year after year really operate highly, yards per touch. Last year was the RB2 in weeks 1 through 4 without Melvin Gordon there. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. His primary competition, Melvin Gordon, is gone. So we're getting at least 12 carries per game. So I understand the fear with, maybe the Chargers won't be as good as the Eagles, but you kind of look in that tier and, you see similar issues with Josh Jacobs and the Raiders, even Joe Mixon and the Bengals. So I just think, Eckler with that projected workload, again, I'm kind of drawing the line after Aaron Jones. That's my 14th RB, and anything after that, you're really running into risk. So I definitely think Eckler deserves to be in that tier 2 of running backs that, again, if he's there in round 2, just take him. Don't worry about the wide receiver right now. There's still going to be great wide receivers.
You can't argue with that usage, though. You can't argue with that usage.
It's just Tyrod Taylor. I just have a hard time with the offense, man. Tyrod Taylor, I think.
Why you hate on Tyrod?
I think he's my least favorite quarterback in the NFL right now, as far as starting. He's like the.
I can't get that Browns tenure out of my head. I can't.
Dude,
Buffalo never really committed to him either. They were just happy that he was being serviceable, and they were looking for a way out until Josh Allen happened.
He's just so bad. He can't make any throw outside the numbers.
Hey.
I will say that Austin Eckler usage, even on the outside, even if it is Tyler quarterback, you can't argue with that, though. That's going to be productive.
I agree. I think it is talent for sure with Eckler is there, and usage should be there. We'll see. I think I may prefer a guy like Josh Jacobs over him in round 2, to be honest.
Again, they're both in that same tier. Real quick, though, look at the Chargers' schedule, because honestly, I'm really big on Joe Burrow this year. I know some people are Daniel Jones. And if you have a QB with just a brutal first 4 weeks, look at Tyrod in the last round of your drafts, because they get the Bengals, the Chiefs. That's going to be a shootout. The Panthers. We got kind of rough games, Buccaneers, Saints. But then before the bye, they got the Jets, Dolphins, Jaguars, and Raiders. So that first half, look, I don't like strength of schedule season long, because things are going to change. Guys are going to get hurt. Who knows what's going to happen over a 16-game season? But especially in September, just take a small look ahead. And I do like Ty God's chances of being a quality quarterback. Who's ever looked good with Hugh Jackson, man? And he's coming off the streets. He's at least been with the Chargers 2 years. He's got his old Bills coach.
See, my thing, though, I just don't know how long Tyrod Taylor's leash is, though, because I do think they want to see Justin Herbert on the field probably sooner rather than later, even given this unorthodox offseason. But we'll see. Either way, I think that doesn't affect Austin Eckler for me in my mind either. I would still, if he's there in round 2, I'm taking him. I'm running and taking him for sure if he's on the board when I'm picking in round 2. That's for sure. But let's move on to the wide receiver. Or go ahead, Doc.
I just wanted to formally apologize. I didn't know we had a Tyrod Taylor stan here, so I apologize. I had no idea. But no, next one we could either do Wentz or Djax. Both of those ADPs are good conversations. I think Djax is a. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was saying, what are you seeing Wentz's ADP at?
I saw that he is. I have it up right here.
12, I think.
Oh, this article might be old. Damn low. It has him at 9th when I'm reading it, but that might be old now. So yeah, the 9th and 12th range. We'll just say. I think it's low too. Right. He has vertical.
He's around Breeze, Brady, Matt Ryan, Josh Allen. Which I mean, actually, he's a much better fantasy quarterback than he is a real life quarterback. So I mean, I guess that is. I mean, to me, I think that seems pretty fair. One quarterback. I mean, and I'd like your take on this is Jared Goff. He's like the 17th quarterback, and to me, I mean, I love that offense.
Yeah. For fantasy wise.
Yeah. That was a guy that I like late, and then I heard you say Burrow. I want to hear your take on Burrow too.
All right, so QB, I got my big seven are all guys that have a really elevated rushing floor. Lamar, Mahomes to an extent, please, Mahomes. Dak, Kyler, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, and Russell Wilson. Wentz is my 8. I think he deserves to be the next guy. And this dude was the QB 10 last year, despite throwing to all those dudes we already talked about. I mean, Greg Ward trotting out there being his number 1. Look, I'm an AAF lifer, so I'm not trying to hate on Greg Ward, but it is what it is, guys. Mm-hmm. And after Wentz, that's where I have kind of the aging gunslinger tier with your Breeze, Stafford, Brady, and stuff. And then I'm looking at Burrow and Cam, QB 12, QB 13. I mean, the rushing floor is truly it's a cheat code in fantasy in terms of a QB having the rushing floor, or if you have a dual threat RB receiving and rushing. I mean, we're just getting like pretty much dual positional value, and it's huge. And Wentz, I mean, we talk about Fitzpatrick leading the Dolphins in rushing last year. I mean, Wentz actually equaled Fitzpatrick's total. He's hardly a statue back there. And I know we all know he can create off script and do really good things in that mold, but he actually gives you a decent amount of rushing production, play-by-play too. But I just think we're going to get back to seeing 2017 version of Wentz because they finally added speed all over the field. And that's really just been the missing ingredient over these last few seasons. And it wasn't like they had some stud field stretcher in 2017, but Torrey Smith had himself a really nice year, and rookie year Mac Hollins was at least showing out a little bit. 2018, Hollins is hurt. They bring in Mike Wallace. He never really even plays a snap, I don't think. 2019, Djax has the huge week 1, and then he goes down. So what they do, I mean, they got Jalen Reagor, and then even John Hightower and Quez Watkins. I mean, those dudes can fly. I thought the Marquise Goodwin was a great signing, and he obviously opted out. But, they've done a lot to make sure that if a couple injuries happen, they're not going to have, Ward and Joshua Perkins on the outside. So the reality that Wentz was already top 10 last year with those dudes he was thrown to, I think the offense is much better now. And that should only just help out all these other guys because we already know the tight ends and, Sanders are amazing, and those, especially in the underneath intermediate areas of the field. And that should just be more cushy than ever with those field stretchers. So definitely all in on Wentz at 8. With Burrow, it just comes down to, I mean, we've seen 6 rookies be top 12 fantasy performers since 2010. It's been Kyler, Dak, Russ, Andrew Luck, Cam, and RG3. And the 2 main similarities between all those guys are 1, they were a week 1 starter, and 2, they average at least 25 rushing yards per game in college. Burrow's got both those, man. He was actually at 27 at LSU, which is even more impressive when you consider sacks come off of the dude's rushing yardage back there. So Burrow, man, he just came off of probably the single best college football season ever. So like I'm basing it more on, okay, he's got the rushing floor, he's going to have the volume. Bengals like one of 9 teams to throw the ball at least 600 times last year. Still a bad defense. They're going to have to lean on him to throw as much as they can. There's also just the chance that this dude is absolutely incredible at football and he's instantly a top 12 QB in the league, because that's what it looked like at times at LSU last season. And when the dude's going, QB 18 or something, like, no, I'm not going to take the, Roethlisbergers and Goffs of the world ahead of someone like Burrow, who just has that untapped ceiling. And Goff, man, okay, maybe they get back to 2017, 2018 levels in the Rams offense, but you look at what the biggest problem was last year. It was the offensive line. And what did they do to address that? Absolutely nothing. They added a 7th round pick and they drafted Cam Akers and Van Jefferson, who might be, very well could be great players. I don't know. But, I mean, I don't think we were watching games last year wondering, oh, if the Rams just have one more receiver, they'd really be in a better place. So Goff might put up some numbers still. I mean, when Higbee was going absolutely bonkers the last 5 weeks of last year, Goff was low-key the fantasy QB5 during that stretch. So maybe McVay gets back to being, the genius of the NFL and he enables Goff. But I don't know. The rushing floor has always been zero there. I just think there's a chance maybe we've seen the best years of this, Rams powerhouse already. I have concern, about Cooper Kupp as well. I think Robert Woods will be good, volumes enough, and he gets the rush attempts unlike Kupp. But, I don't know, guys. It's tough in Los Angeles. Maybe I'll be looking stupid doubting McVay and them in a couple of weeks, but it wasn't very pretty for large portions of last year, and I just don't like the squad they've brought back.
No, I think that's a good point. And plus, I mean, the Bengals line didn't do that much either, but they do get Jonah Williams back at least this year. So that's huge. And not only that, the targets he has there. T. Higgins, A.J. Green, because I'm sure A.J. Green will play at least some point this season. I don't know how long, but Tyler Boyd, John Ross, they're
Auden
Tate. There is so many. Auden Tate is really nice. He's probably, I should say his name over John Ross. But there's so many options for Burrow to throw to this year. I agree with you. I think I definitely buy on the Joe Burrow hype for sure. I did not know that about his rushing, though. That's a key stat, especially for a guy whose offensive line is going to be bad, because Jared Goff, we all know, is not going to run. At least Joe Burrow will definitely take off if he senses pressure, and I'm sure he's going to do that a lot his rookie year. I like that. That's a key thing to think of.
And the volume.
Yeah,
Zach Taylor does throw the ball a ton.
Yeah.
And they should be playing from behind a lot too. I didn't really factor that in.
No,
I like that too.
That's a great point. But I don't understand why Jalen Reagor's ADP is higher than Deshaun Jackson's, though, especially with this unorthodox rookie season. I think that's just more of people not thinking Deshaun Jackson will play much this year and Jalen Reagor will.
Yeah, it would have to be health, right? I think
they're both going to be out there, and that's probably why Reagor is getting the bump at this point. Because, as good as D-Jack still is, I think, I mean, it is a question if he's going to play 16 games. So I think it's fine putting, the season-long projection of Reagor ahead of Jackson, even though Jackson will probably be, weekly ranked higher because of that. He's always got that, 100-plus yards and multi-touchdown potential. But it's going to be fun seeing this offense with speed all over the field again. Who do you guys think closes out through wide receiver sets, though? I mean, Jeffrey's still banged up. Is it going to be Arcega-Whiteside's second chance, or are we going to see maybe Hightower get involved sooner rather than later?
I think it depends. It depends because I feel like they would rather go with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside because that's a second-round pick. They obviously believe in. But if he struggles, I don't think the leash is as long as it was last year. I think they'll be put Hightower, because there was points last season when he was struggling and he did start the game off, but Robert Davis and Deontay Burnett had more snaps than him throughout the game. Yeah. That's another situation you could see with John Hightower for sure. I'm with you on the John Hightower hype train. I thought when I watched this film, this is another John Brown. That's exactly what I thought. So I would love to see John Hightower make an immediate impact because, again, just nothing but vertical threat, especially in the slot. You line him up in the slot and have a vertical threat like John Hightower in the slot, Carson Wentz is going to go crazy. I would much rather see John Hightower than J.J. Arcega-Whiteside personally, but he's having a great camp right now. The Eagles are all in on him, so the depth chart's going to. I don't think the Eagles, to be honest with you, Ian, and I know a lot of Eagles fans are going to disagree with this, they're not even thinking about Alshon Jeffrey. Whatever he does at this point, they don't care. He's off on the sidelines while they're practicing, just catching balls in the air. They're not really worried about it.
His ADP is nuts right now. It shouldn't even be anywhere near Deshaun.
He's five ranked 5 spots below Deshaun Jackson. I don't get that. The guy might not even play till December.
Yeah, that's pretty iffy.
As far as who would take the next step, I mean, from a fantasy perspective, you would think it'd be J-Jaw, just because he could have touchdown production. I think if Hightower were to step, it would be more so for on-field production rather than stats or fantasy, just because I mean, after you got Djax, you got Reagor, you got Ertz, you have Sanders, I don't think Hightower could have enough target volume.
It's probably going to be Goddard anyway. I mean, that's what we saw last year. But just embracing those 2 tight end sets as they did last year. Get your best players on the field. I mean, why not? Goddard's the interesting guy. But so Reagor and Djax, they're both going so cheap. I mean, outside the top 40 receivers. These are exactly the guys you should be looking to target. I mean, I was talking with the Ringers, Danny Kelly, on the pod earlier this week, and one of his really good points was, stick to ADP in the early rounds. I mean, we've been studying those guys more than anyone. those ADP ranks are usually pretty sharp by this time of the year. And then, go for the upside down later rounds. That's where you can trust your gut a little bit more. And yeah, Rager and Djax, like there's no scenario where all the Eagles wide receivers stay healthy and they don't have a single one ranked inside the top 40 fantasy performers. It's kind of a similar situation as in Houston with the Texans wide receivers. All these guys are cheap, and Deshaun Watson, like Carson Wentz, they're going to put up numbers, and someone's going to be getting those numbers. So might as well be these guys. I mean, anytime you can get wide receiver fours, they're being priced as wide receiver fours that could realistically return, wide receiver 2, how even wide receiver 1 production on any given week, you got to do it. And that's the tight end spot's a little more interesting though, guys, because I get worried about Ertz after that bye last year. Ertz had 60 targets. Goddard had 55 running out. I think Ertz still leads the team in targets, and Goddard's probably not going to see quite enough run to, consistently be more than like a borderline tight end play. But God forbid one of these dudes goes down, and we're talking about like an every week top 3 tight end.
Yeah, because I will say Dallas Goedert has not had the space in this offense that Zach Ertz has had in 2017. Because like you said, 2018, they had Mike Wallace, he went down, blah, didn't happen. 2019, one game of Deshaun. I do think I'm buying on Dallas Goedert's upside a little bit because of this. Because when he's in the red zone, I just notice he's always open. So I think this is the guy that could actually lead the Eagles in touchdown receptions this year, actually, to be quite honest with you. So I'm a little buying on Dallas Goedert just for the fact that I don't think he's ever had a chance to play with these vertical threats. I do believe they stick with 12 personnel majority of their formation. So hopefully you're putting Rager and Deshaun outside, and then you're feasting with Ertz and Goddard in the middle of the field. I do think there's a lot more upside with Goddard this year than there is in years past.
Yeah, he's a stud, and he's not too expensive right now. I mean, I think Ertz is the one I'm probably shying away a little bit more.
I am shying away from Ertz just because of what you just said, and I did realize that the targets were a little bit down, and they were more on the Dallas Goedert train. And I do think it's going to happen again. But also, Zach Ertz was double covered almost every time he faced coverage. So it's also like you got to give and take there. Teams are really focusing on Ertz more than they are on Goddard. But I do think
I don't like Ertz in round 3 either.
I don't like him in round 3.
I think he's average round 3, which I don't like. If you can get him in round 4 or 5, then cool. But round 3, I don't like. Although
I think he's going to score. Like I think he's going to get the yardage. I don't think the touchdowns are going to be there to really make it worth a 3rd round pick.
I don't know though, but going back to what we've talked about with all this space, Sanders and Ertz should be the 2 that benefit the most from it, from this speed. So it's and with how much Wentz loves Ertz. I mean, I think the volume's always going to be there.
He's going to produce. The bigger issue is like, okay, you have Kittle, Kelsey, and Andrews clearly at the top. Those dudes are absolutely going to ball out. I mean, the next guys are all great, like Ertz, Evan Ingram, Higby, Gronk, Waller, Hunter Henry. But there's questions with all of them, and I don't want to be the guy like reaching on them in the middle rounds when they're still like stud wide receivers or, lesser 3-down RBs potentially still on the board. I mean, I'd rather bide my time, get a Goddard, also a Chris Herndon, and like maybe even, if you're a premium tight end league, like a Jonnu Smith or something in the late rounds, because all those guys have great potential too, and they're just not costing you the same sort of draft capital. So I've kind of been, either all in, give me a Kittle, in round 2 or something like that, or I'm waiting until like round 12 before I'm taking my first tight end.
Yeah, I that's what I did with Jonnu Smith, because him and Tannehill were electric last year. I think they're only going to pick up where they left off, and I got him in like 12th round. So I agree with you completely on that one. I think Jonnu Smith is going to go off this year. But another guy I wanted to talk about was what I wanted to talk about was the Eagles defense and special teams. They're ranked 12th right now. They add Darius Slay. I think the interceptions are going to go up with him and Nicole Roby-Coleman. The returners this year, they have so many more options in the punt return game.
Rager, man.
Yeah, Rager is, that's where it comes to me. Rager was awesome at punt returning. He's such a threat with that. I think he could score with the ball in his hands. But the huge thing with me is Darius Slay is probably going to get a lot of interceptions with this defensive line pressure this year. So what are you thinking, Ian? 12th fair?
No, I'm 6. I don't know where the 12th came from. I mean, this has always been one of the league's, at least, in the last 5 years, one of the league's best defensive lines. And for them to go out and get Hargrave and really reinforce that. Also healthy, hopefully healthy Malik Jackson coming back. Haven't exactly been tuning in on him that much during training camp. But if he's back, okay, we're 5-6 deep with beasts on the defensive line again. So, we're looking for pressure in terms of fantasy defenses always. That's, if you just look at the scoring and you kind of, the point totals, the weird, okay, if you allow, between 14 and 19 points, like the differences between those, like you're just not, it's going to be hard to predict, and it's going to be really hard to even, pull away in that. You see these defenses that stand out. It's the ones that really can force havoc up and down the field, and that is the Eagles. And yeah, I mean, those cornerback signings are just so huge for them. I mean, you guys have seen it over the years. Just their complete inability to stop wide receiver ones over the past 2 seasons has really sunk some of their chances. So, even if Slay at times, like he didn't grade out all that awesome with PFF last year, but I think that was more because him and Stephon Gilmore and a little bit Jalen Ramsey are the only corners in the league that will not only track the opposing wide receiver one, but they'll also move into a slot. He wasn't even getting safety help. I mean, it was just one of those situations for like, okay, Keenan Allen's getting 90 yards, so I guess it's a bad game, but it took him 14 targets to do so, and Slay was, on his hip the entire time. So he's anyone's idea of a true cornerback one. And the Roby Coleman was grading out really well last year from the slot. So we'll see if whether it's Maddox, Sidney Jones, whoever it might be, as the number 3 guy, you need 3 legit corners in today's NFL. And it sucks they lost, Malcolm Jenkins, but maybe Jalen Mills can do his thing. But no, I think especially in fantasy land, like this should be a top 6 defense again because of the D-line ability. 12th in real life, maybe we can talk about that. But no, in fantasy, that sign up. But hey, if you don't need to draft a defense, guys, don't go get a Boston Scott, and in case something happens in the next 2 weeks, then you can just sign someone after that. I know a lot of leagues force you to draft defenses and kickers, but definitely don't be afraid to stream them. And for the love of God, do not draft them before the last 2 rounds.
Oh yeah, no, never. I never do that. Especially kickers. No, I would never do that with a kicker. That's ridiculous.
Ian, I have a question. How many leagues are you in yearly?
It added up this year. Last year, I think I had it at 4 or 5, which was fine. And, that's just season long, not best ball is a whole different thing. But this year I said yes a little too much. I had some more dynasty leagues. Now I think I'm at like 9 weekly leagues. I'm going to have to re-rack. So I'm kind of nervous about it. But, at the end of the day, it all comes down to my piece of shit 8-man league that's with my old college buddies. That's the one I truly care about. And, being in a league with 8 people, all the rosters are so stacked, I can hardly even separate from these guys. So we'll see if I can avoid a year being called a fraud or not with the buddies.
There you go.
Man, I get into 4 leagues and then I start getting stressed.
Anxiety.
Too much anxiety, too much research that goes into it, too much lineup setting each week. Like, because I'm in 4 leagues now and I'm like, this is the max. I can't do anything more than this.
You're not sure if you should celebrate a 90-yard touchdown or be mad about it. You're like,
you celebrate like every play, and you're also like, oh, well, that's also not
right. 2 names I want to bring up, and you brought one of them up already. Chase Edmonds. He is my dynasty that I'm in. It's a 1 running back slot, and then there's 2 receivers, 2 flexes. So I completely downplayed the running back position going into it. And I had Sonny Michel last year. Well, I got rid of him, traded for a tight end, whatever. So now my sole running back is Chase Edmonds. So I'm like, it's a 2 QB league. I have Mahomes and Kyler. And then I got like Amari, I got Godwin, I got Ertz. It's a pretty stacked team, but my running back situation is just horrendous.
Yeah, clearly.
So I'm hoping that Edmonds can somehow shape out a role.
I liked Edmonds before he got hurt last year, though. I was actually becoming a Chase Edmonds big fan because I got him on the waiver wire. I was so hyped, but then he got hurt, and then I'm like,
he's a freaking baller when he's on the field, man.
Yeah, but then Kenyon Drake came along, and I don't think they're going to take him off the field in favor of Chase Edmonds now because of how good Kenyon Drake looked, too. It's rough.
So what goes into you mentioned 4 running back names as far as what was your factor in putting them in the tier 1 of backups?
Yeah, so in this range, I want running backs where if disaster strikes, they're going to be like RB1s. I mean, I'm not drafting like Marlon Mack, Kerryon Johnson, even like Phillip Lindsay and Tariq Cohen, these guys that, okay, they maybe, if they have a good week, they can give you some like flex appeal. But even if their team starter or, rookie gets hurt, like there's still going to be a 2 or 3 back committee, like regardless. And I think the situations where that changes is if Kamara goes down, Latavius is going to step up as he did 2 games last year and be the featured guy. Dalvin Cook, he goes down. I've been talking to some Vikings beat reporters, and everyone's confident Madison would be the 3-down workhorse in that scenario. I think same thing's true with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. I think Chase Edmonds is the 4th guy that we could realistically strongly expect that. Also, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, but Kareem's going so much higher in drafts. He's not really in this range. But yeah, Chase Edmonds, no, regardless of who was the Cardinals' RB1 last year, it was David Johnson, Chase Edmonds for a week, and then Kenyon Drake. I mean, they were all just getting fed. And 3-down workloads, targets, rush attempts, everything. It was a one-back backfield, and all they did this offseason was add Benjamin's 7th-round pick. And, while Kingsbury said, we're happy to have 3 really good running backs, it's going to be the Kenyon Drake show. And then I think it's going to be, if he goes down, Chase Edmonds is really going to have a chance. Now, maybe Edmonds could carve out some standalone value on a weekly basis because he was, dealing with a hamstring injury the second half of last year. He was only really available for special teams usage. I mean, just wasn't at 100% like David Johnson wasn't, when we saw that run he had against the Buccaneers, it looked like he had a piano on his back. But Edmonds, okay, I don't think he should be your RB1 starting running back in any fantasy league, man. You might have faded the position a little too strongly there. But
my team is stacked, man.
Hey, you're one Kenyon Drake injury away from being uber stacked, I guess is the point. But I would try to help yourself out a little bit more than a guy that's going to be, outside the top 40 RBs more weeks than not. But hey, this is why he's a value though, because I would draft him at his current draft position, even if we knew he had no chance of standalone value because of his upside if Drake goes down. But this is a situation where he wasn't healthy in the second half of last year. Wouldn't be shocking if he could get some sort of committee out there. But yeah, I'm really high on Drake and high on Edmonds just because the Cardinals are one of a handful of teams that do seem to really rely on that one single back.
I like the handcuff options that you did because it was like the same order as my gut, so that's why I love it. Because I did have Kareem Hunt number 1 because of receiving ability, because the Browns are obviously going to throw it, especially with. I think we're going to see a lot more Kareem Hunt this year just because Kevin Stefanski's involved a lot more. I think there's going to be a lot more. I mean, obviously Nick Chubb is one of the greatest running backs in the league, but I do think the zone counters runs with Kareem Hunt are going to pay off this year a lot more. But then, like you said, his usage of receiving, 33% of his snaps are in the slot. I love that. I think that's a huge boost for his usage. Latavius Murray is one Alvin Kamara injury from beginning away. And not only that, the Saints like to use 2 running backs so much as is. So Murray's pretty much a flex starter for me anyways. And then Madison, I love the Alexander because I have Dalvin Cook. So I like this Alexander Madison pick because we all know Dalvin Cook's susceptible to getting hurt. So, and Madison looks good. I think he's a guy that can come in and actually take Dalvin Cook's job if he has to. So I do like I like those 3 picks for the handcuffs. That's my top 3 handcuffs anyways. So I like to hear that.
Oh yeah.
And then my last name is DJ Chark. Where is DJ Chark on the fantasy dynasty rankings, and why isn't he number 1?
I don't have dynasty rankings right in front of me, but no, I've been saying I think Minshew and Chark this year could be like what Fitzpatrick and Devontae Parker were last season. Just a talented, entertaining, fantasy productive duo on a bad team, and that's what we're kind of looking at with the Jaguars. I mean, I have Chark as my wide receiver 19, one spot ahead of Parker, ahead of Diggs, ahead of Sutton. Kind of, I think there's really, really a bunch of studs in that, wide receiver 2 range. Your OBJs, DJ Moores, Amari Coopers of the world that have proven it maybe a little bit longer than Chark. But at the end of the day, he's the undisputed number 1 pass game option in his offense. And the dude's a stud. I mean, some of the things he did last year, yards after the catch, I mean, he just did look like that true, this guy can completely carry your entire passing game type of receiver. And it seems like he'll have every chance to do so because, I mean, Laviska Shenault's been getting some nice raves from training camp, but he's still kind of, if anyone's job he's going to take, it's going to be D.D. Westbrook, not really DJ Chark. So, yeah, man, I'm fine going after Chark early and often.
That's a great comparison, though. I do think they're going to be the Ryan Fitzpatrick, Devontae Parker type thing. I think that's awesome. Oh, yeah, we got some little dog action, too. I like that.
Lily the wiener dog is in the house.
I always have to keep my dogs out of the room because they always bark and like to make their appearances on the podcast. So
is his name Tyrod?
Oh, he's a Lily.
Not this one. This is Lily.
That's adorable. All right, Ian. Well, you answered a lot of my fantasy questions. I got learned so much more today, and I feel more confident about a lot of my picks today too, without you even knowing it. Just from you talking, like I'm like, all right, like I picked that guy, now I feel really good. Especially D.A. Shark, I completely agree with you on that. I mean, no matter how bad the Jaguars are, that dude's gonna ball. Gardner's gonna ball. I really like his prospects this year because I did draft him. He's my wide receiver too, so I'm liking that.
The Jaguars can be awful, and Chark can still be great. Like I think running back is a little more concerning when you want to look at these like really bad teams and their potential volume. I mean, Chark, win or lose, the dude's going to be eating. Fournette's the one I'm staying away from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just about that.
Yeah, absolutely stay away from Fournette. I agree with you. I mean, they're going to have to pass no matter what, especially when they're losing all those games by so many points this year because that defense, they're going to have to pass a lot, and that's just Shark's bread and butter. I mean, last year he really came on strong. I expect nothing better this season. But, I mean, I'm good on my fantasy stuff. Tyler, you ready? Ready to wrap this up?
I'm good, man.
We actually did like a 40, almost close to 50-minute episode too. So, again, we really appreciate your time today to talk fantasy football with us.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. Listeners out there, check out the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. If you got more questions throughout the year, I'll be doing some start sit stuff throughout the week, just previewing the game, trying to put a fantasy lens through it. But you can't really talk fantasy without knowing just the normal X's and O's as well. So it's a nice little mix. And yeah, dudes, thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Of course.
And it's not just fantasy either. This Twitter content, it's top notch from Ian. Seriously, one of my favorite followers.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorite followers too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the pod, definitely check out the pod because I know I'll be listening for sure. All right, thanks for